Hello, this is Ujjwal. Welcome to another video tutorial on the Mudra channel. Today I want to share how to achieve an easy watercolor effect using distress inks and stamping. Watercolors are so trendy at the moment, and it's a trend that's here to stay because watercolors are easily available and the effect you get with watercolors is gorgeous. But not all of us are very familiar with watercoloring or are comfortable with it. So this is another way to achieve that effect without actually using watercolors. For today's card, I will be using the Mudra stamp set called Butterfly Flutters, which was part of our very first release in March. This set has some big open butterflies which are great for trying out a lot of techniques, and it also has these small solid images which I will be using today. I will also be using Canson watercolor paper to work on. Names and links to all the supplies used in today's video are mentioned on the blog as well as the video description below. To start with, I will stamp the butterfly image with distress inks on the watercolor paper, which I've cut to size slightly smaller than I would have for layering, and you will see why later in the video. I'm using Wild Honey, Wilted Violet, Salty Ocean and Crushed Olive, the 4 colors for today's card, and I have stamped my image first with Wild Honey, and I'm cleaning it with a clean shampoo cloth, which I talked about in a previous video. Next, I'm using Wilted Violet, and for Wilted Violet I used the second generation stamping. I simply inked up the stamp and stamped it on a scrap piece of paper first, and then I stamped it onto the watercolor paper without re-inking it. So what I get is a softer image. I used second generation stamping a few more times on this card with other colors as well to achieve a variation in colors without using more distress inks. So among other things, second generation stamping is great not only for soften the colors that you might feel are too dark for your project, as well as to achieve more color variations with a limited number of inks. So even though I used just 4, it looks like I used different inks, more than 4, onto today's project. Now, if you notice, the stamped impression isn't crisp but splotchy, and we are going to use that to our advantage today. So let's get all the images stamped, and you can see that I used second generation stamping with Wild Honey as well, and I have a lighter shade as well as with Salty Ocean. So now that all the images are stamped, I will take a paintbrush. I'm using a number 4 round brush and some clean water and go over the stamped images with my brush and add water to them. Now, since distress inks are water reactive, they will blend and it will smoothen out all the splotches and the harsh stamped lines and give me a soft, blended, uneven, kind of a diluted watercolor effect at the end. So I am going to go over all the stamped images with watercolor, and this is the trick to get that watercolor effect. I think distress inks are great, and you can use them in so many different ways, but I really like doing this. And you can see that immediately I have that blended look, and it looks like I actually used my paintbrush to paint the butterflies onto the paper, which I actually didn't. I just simply stamped it, and it was a matter of minutes that I had this beautiful panel going for me. Now I can see that the images are softer and they look just like watercolors. To add the final touch, I'm going to go ahead and add some splatters. I think splatters are a great way to accent your watercolor pieces. And not only just watercolor pieces, you can use them for cards, and they add that mystical, magical look to your cards. So I'm using some black Gansai Tambi watercolor pen set, and I'm using the black and added some fine splatters, not too big. Now to assemble the card, I am going to cut the panel at a diagonal with my cutter, and this is why I had cut it a bit shorter, so that I have space in between to add my sentiment. That is the layout that I had in mind when I started making the card. So you can see that now I can fit a sentiment perfectly into the center. And to make sure that I have the perfect placement, I'm going to go ahead and trace the line with a pencil, just mark where my sentiment needs to go, and then I'm going to take some black archival ink and stamp the sentiment from the same set which says "You are fabulous" onto that marked area. This particular stamp set has some lovely sentiments as well. I really like the font, and you can see that I messed up the sentiment a bit, so I went ahead and used a different piece of the base cardstock and re-stamped it. It was really bothering me, so I just re-stamped it and added a panel underneath before adhering my cut panels. I also used a black strip of cardstock to add some accent and to make the sentiment pop. And then I adhered the panels with some foam tape, and there you go. You can see that I have that lovely watercolor effect by just simply using the distress inks and stamping. So I hope you enjoyed today's video tutorial, and I hope you give this technique a try. And do not forget to share with us. We have a Facebook group where you can share your Mudra stamp projects with us. So we will look forward to seeing your creations. Thank you so much for watching, and have a lovely day.